Over the last 12 years, we've hardly done anything about insulating people's homes.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's a good idea for both those reasons? We've heard from the MPs that gets people used to the idea of perhaps conserving energy, but also that people will be helped out with their high energy bills.
I certainly think it's an interesting idea. I think the broader question is whether or not we're going to have to become more used to this kind of action in the future as the energy mix in the United Kingdom changes. I think there's some implications that this actually might be as a result of the fact that it's not been very windy recently, so they're having to rely on coal. So is this a question of the UK's energy mix, and is that going to be more of an issue as we transfer over to renewables?
Would you do it if you had a smart meter? Would you have applied for a discount to switch off the lights and get a bit of cash back?
I think if I was in a position where I needed the cash back, I would, but, you know, I'm well paid enough not to need to do that. But I think for families who do need help with their bills, it's going to be something which is going to be very helpful and also reduce the amount of energy which is used.
Just a moment. But can Nadeem Zahawi still fulfil his role as party chairman while all of these questions are still swirling?
Yes, I think he can. I think Gareth is absolutely right to say that we do live in a society where people are innocent until proven guilty. And, you know, and I'm glad that the Prime Minister has called in an investigation with the independent ethics advisor. And I think we'll have to reserve our judgment until that conclusion has been made. You know, I know Nadeem has contributed a lot to CCHQ with data.
That's the Conservative Central Office.
And I think one of the big problems, though, for Rishi Sunak is undoubtedly Nadeem's main asset is that he's a great media performer. And he can't do that at the moment because all that's going to happen is good journalists like you will ask about his tax affairs.
Thank you. And Nadeem Zahawi, you can come on the programme at Chris's invitation any time to explain your tax affairs. Let's talk. There is an issue, as Rosa said, Albie, with the mantra from Rishi Sunak about integrity, professionalism and accountability. Do you think this yet puts more pressure on Rishi Sunak? To some extent, these are issues that predate him in Boris Johnson's time, but all the same, he's the Prime Minister now.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. The stories that we're talking about today will not be the stories that Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, wants us to be focusing on, or maybe, indeed, that the public want us to be focusing on. I sort of get the sense that maybe some of these stories are a bit exciting to us in the Westminster bubble, but actually perhaps viewers at home and people in the public will want us to be focusing on the cost of living crisis.
That's just shabby.
The NHS crisis.
Shabby, shabby, shabby.
Well, I mean, is it shabby? I mean, yeah. but there is an important row about whether or not it will actually improve air quality and whether or not this is going to restrict people who need their cars, their vehicles to get around outer and inner London.
Look, I think everyone wants cleaner air. I don't think that is something which we are debating. It is the measures that we put in place to get that cleaner air. And I don't like this idea that we're going to put restrictions on how people live their lives so we can get cleaner air. I'd much prefer that we provided the infrastructure so people can use electric cars, so people can use public transport in a way that means people can continue to live their lives freely, but the air gets cleaner rather than just saying, well, we're going to charge you to drive around London when you're a small business owner, perhaps a builder, that has to rely on their car in order to get their livelihood.
Isn't the polluter pays a pretty good principle?
Well, I think it depends which polluter it is, but my point is,
why does it depend which polluter it is?
Because ultimately, you know, if you are a young person who can cycle into work, then there's no problem. But if you are someone that has to relies on a heavy goods vehicle, for example, and there's literally no other way that you can do your trade without it, then I feel that seems a bit not very equitable.
There are a series of examples. It is really depressing that those people are, whether it's routinely or even occasionally, having to go to a food bank. We shouldn't be a country where you have to put out the begging bowl when you work for your living.
Albie?
Look, I don't think it's appropriate for people to be judging and dictating other people who use food banks, especially people who are unlikely to have ever or will ever use food banks in their entire life and who are very well paid. So I actually found that comment from Simon, and actually a lot of other people have been making similar comments, quite difficult.
Lee Anderson.
Be that as it may, you know, sure, definitely people can help ease the cost of living crisis by better personal budgeting, perhaps trading down in supermarkets. There is a role for better personal finance, but it's how you phrase those comments, and I think the phraseology of that was tough.
But you just ended up doing exactly what you said people shouldn't do, trading down in supermarkets. Do you think poorer people haven't actually thought about trying to get the cheapest available brand in the supermarket? We had this from another minister last year. It's been a series of Tory MPs who go on television and lecture people about how to manage their personal finances.
I wasn't lecturing anyone, Chris. I was just making...
people should trade down in a supermarket.
They should. I said they could. It's a different word. I'm not lecturing anyone. I'm just saying there is a role for personal budgeting and personal finance to ease the cost of living crisis. Do you disagree with that?
You've just done it again. again.
But do you disagree with that? Is
do
there
you-
a role
do you-
or not?
No, it's the patronising
But it's not. I said
Well,
there
hang
could
on,
be.
hang on,
patronising
There could be.
assumption behind it, which basically says
Well.
these poor people haven't even thought about doing better budgeting. Honestly, it really angers me.
Well, that is an assumption of motivation, obviously, behind the comment. Is that what you meant?
No, that's not what I meant. I was just simply making the point that there is a role for personal finance when it comes to easing the cost of living crisis. I've done it personally. Maybe everyone else around the table has done it personally. It's not me passing a judgment
don't
on
know what
someone
you
else
mean
or being
There's a role for
condescending
personal
towards other
finance.
people
What does that mean as a
and how they
sentence?
manage the cost of living crisis.
I mean,